This is the theorist we are going to discuss today is Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault, as I said, was presented to you in the second year after the macro theorists, Parsons and Althusser. You know, we started with them actually, and then we moved to the opposite end, those who focus on the agent, the subject, who is the actor actually, interrelationships between the subjects, between the actors, and then from that, those were symbolic interactionists. And then we moved into phenomenological sociologists, Schutz and others. In the previous one, Goffman. And then we had Michel Foucault, whom was a theorist who opposed, actually you can go back and read it, Lader's book, Understanding Social Theory. All previous theories, so this is 1970s, actually 1960s and 70s France. In 1960s, 70s France, some new developments took place in philosophy, in social sciences in general, and actually it could be related to the events or developments before 1968 student movement, student activism. As you remember, Wallerstein calls that 1968 revolution, and aftermath of that event. And that's then one of the major events in history of France, actually in the histories of all Western countries, including Turkey, even China. There was at Tiananmen demonstrations and shooting of demonstrators at that one. Anyway, Foucault entered into the field of philosophy and social sciences, psychology, and brought a new approach. Initially, he called that approach archaeological approach. Towards the end of his life, or in his second part of his life, and the books that he wrote in that period, the new method was called genealogical method, or archaeological method and genealogical method. Now, this was different from historical research. It was different from sociological research, although eventually historical sociology is also using, after Foucault, Foucault's method of archaeological research into the history of culture, into history of sciences, into history of psychology, madness, psychiatry, in the history of social sciences, or what he calls human sciences. Human sciences. Okay. Now, he first did this archaeological research, although at that time he wasn't yet calling it archaeological, because he called it archaeological in the book On Order of Things, which is a later work. But he started doing archaeological research in the history of psychiatry, psychology, how madness was transformed being a community phenomena, people interacting with the mad people as if they are part of their community, maybe sometimes making fun of them, but they were integrated into the community. But with what Foucault calls classical age, and this is classical age is before the modern age. Actually, he locates it between 17th century and the beginning of 19th century. So 17th century, 1600s, 1700s, and 1800s, the end of it, the classical era. In this classical era, mad people started to be conceptualized in a different way, in a medical way. And that continued into the modern age, into the 19th century, and mental hospital emerged. Mental hospital emerged, and mad people or abnormal people, guilty people, from this transition from the classical age to the modern age, it continued, picked up from their communities, isolated from their communities, and put into closed closed societies, asylums, mental hospitals, prisons. So Foucault started studying or doing archaeological work, as I said, with the study of how mental illness became an object of medical analysis, or a kind of scientific analysis, and something to be treated. Whereas previously, madness was a part of the community. Some people somehow become mad. Sometimes they are wiser than the normal people, but sometimes very stupid. There's a whole range for them, but they were in the community. But with the classical age and with modern 19th century, they became the subject of medical analysis and the emergence of science, science of madness, psychiatry, and then later psychology, and later clinical psychology, as you know. Okay. Now, then he continued his research, and now in the second one, he focused on the birth of clinic, what he calls the birth of clinic. That's the title of the book. There, he continues actually his research, the medical professions focusing on madness. Now he takes up medical profession, doctors and their practicing of their profession, and their science, and he coined the term medical gaze. G-A-Z-E, gaze, bakış, tıbbi bakış. Now, medical gaze is not a normal gaze. Medical gaze is a gaze, a looking into people, into illness, into organisms with discourses of medicine, with discourses, knowledge of medicine, and a kind of power emerges that accompanies that knowledge, that the discourses used by the doctors and applied to the ill people by asking them questions first, and why, what part of your body is aching, what's happening, what other symptoms there are. I am sure in some part of your life you experience being face to face with a doctor, and doctor asking you questions about your health and your illness. When it started, anamnese, the process of diagnosis. But it is not, a normal and a non-doctor can also ask you about your illness. A friend, how are you? What happened? Now, a friend of you asking you about your illness and doctor asking you about your illness are different, says Foucault. Because the doctor has the medical gaze. It is like a microscope, microscope in biology. What does the microscope do? Of course, doctors use microscope too, but when they are studying microorganisms, but when they are dealing with a human organism or other veterinaries, they deal with animals, of course, yeah, but they are thinking about human organism, and how medicine man, doctor, equipped with anatomy and physiology, it is all these knowledge is gradually progressing, and 2,500-year-old profession of medicine is now entering into era of scientific medicine, or is now accompanied with physiology, biology, anatomy. These are sciences. Emergence of biological sciences, and coming to the help of the doctors. But it is not only that, of course. Being a doctor is all that knowledge plus skills of operation, of diagnosis. So he talked in this The Birth of the Clinic, he talks about these. Now, actually, extensive use of archaeological research method is in order of things. Now, in order of things, actually, subtitle of order of things is an archaeology of human sciences. An archaeology of human sciences. Now, in this book, Foucault is focusing on emergence of three social sciences. What are they? No, two social sciences and a natural science. but he calls that also human science because, okay, let me start with that one. It is biology. Now, biology emerges, now is transformed from natural history approach in previous centuries, in classical era, for example. It emerges in the modern, in the classical era and in the modern era as biology, the science of life, living. Now, the human being here is depicted, human being is the center. Now, Foucault says that here in biology of human body, human beings emerge as a living subject. In this archaeology of human sciences, actually, Foucault is interested in subjectification. How are subjects, human subjects, are constructed, created? Actually, what he's talking about in this book is how man is constructed, the concept of man, human being. Okay, in English, man means also human being. Actually, if you look at the order of things, which I put there, you can go into the book and you can read it, and especially the prefaces, the introduction, etc. So the living subject, he starts with that. And then he goes into a social science, and perhaps first social science that emerged in 18th century, but became, I mean, considered a science in 19th century. If you remember, Adam Smith wrote his The Wealth of Nations in 1775, 76, in the second half of 18th century. So already man, human being, is emerging in the economics. This is the science of economics, science of labor, science of production and distribution, science of industrial division of labor. Here, human being, Foucault focuses here, not in history of economics per se. No, he's interested in how in economics, as it is actually, its name was not economics, but political economy. Political economy emerged in England, in Scotland, actually, while an industrial revolution is taking place in London and around. The Scottish people on the north are observing. Sociology is also emerging there, actually, parallel to political economy. And here, a human being emerges as a producing subject, a producer, a subject as producer. Now, Foucault says this type of a conceptualization did not exist in the beginning of the classical age. It only emerged towards the end of classical age and flourished in 19th century, from Adam Smith to Ricardo, and finally it traveled to Germany, and Marx started using political economic research, where laborers are the main subject, laborers, producers. Now, weren't there producers before the classical age, before the modern age? Of course, there were. They were serfs, they were slaves, or what? No, the emergence of the producer as a human being, how establishing a contract between the capital owner, the employer, and the labor. This, he focuses on this. So that is the second science. He focuses in this order of things. The third human science that he focuses is grammar or linguistics. Weren't there study of language before classical age and modern age? Yes, there were, of course, but as a scientific, social scientific activity. Now, there were, of course, written treatises on speaking, good speak, eloquent speaking, of course, yes, but focusing on the grammar of language and the human subject who is speaking her language grammatically, a subject, a human subject, emergence of human being again, emergence of man. Now, what Foucault is saying is this, that human being, man as a subject, didn't exist in the Middle Ages or before. It existed, it gradually emerged in the classical age. That's between 17th, 18th centuries and full-blown 19th and 20th centuries. And with him, actually, and some other social scientists, philosophers, researchers, human being as a rational being, okay, as a thinking being. Remember Descartes, again, the beginning of modern sciences. How did Descartes start his book on reasoning, research, science? He said, the beginning is, I think, therefore I exist. A thinking subject, thinking, rational subject, man as a rational being, man as consistent, rational being, emerged during the classical age and during modern era. And actually, this is, he says, this is a historical construction. This is a historical construction, and actually, it opened, okay, with the continuities of enlightenment, being continuity of enlightenment. It equipped human beings with technology, with sciences, great control of nature. But to conceptualize human beings having a reason consistent throughout their life, and reason and science, reasoning man, scientifically thinking man, human being, being in the center, is going to disappear. And actually, he started this disappearance. Started to move this integrated, consistent individual subject from center of the stage to the periphery, because it's that human beings, human subject is a historical subject, emerged as historical subject, and a constant progress, development of society, social relationships, and human beings' selves and reason, their reason, is an illusion. He said, oh, yeah, it is partially true, but it is not the whole truth. It is not the whole truth, because human beings in their lives have passages, interruptions, breaks. Human history, and at least he says in the European history that we live in, or the French society, French culture, it is not an uninterrupted, continuous development. No, he says, there are interruptions, there are breaks, there are jumps, there are discontinuities. The conception of a continuous cultural, social, scientific development is an illusion. No, all these change, develop, sometimes go ahead, sometimes go back. So a continuous progressive development, enlightenment is, anyway, is this hope is shattered, as already we have seen in Bauman's book Holocaust, Second World War illustrated that although technology, industry of Western societies, or the societies as a whole in the world, developed continuously, more and more control of nature. Yes, there's a progress there, a continuous progress there. Or even there, in the development of sciences, you might be familiar with Kuhn, Thomas Kuhn. Now, Thomas Kuhn, those of you who know his work, Structure of Scientific Revolutions, he talked about shifts of paradigm shifts. Science developed not cumulatively, but with paradigm shifts. Foucault is a contemporary, or actually Thomas Kuhn is younger than him. Foucault uses Bachelard and Conguyen. Conguyen, maybe you also encountered Conguyen if you are having sociology of body. You would remember Conguyen from there. Conguyen also talks about epistemological obstacles, epistemological breaks, shifts. Sciences do not develop progressively. In the same way, human beings ethically, morally, do not develop progressively, as it is shown. Human beings in 20th century, in his time, or during Second World War, are not better than human beings in 16th century or in 10th century, morally, because they were, as Bauman described in his book Holocaust, and Foucault makes reference to that. He says that in the Second World War, during the Second World War, the fascist Nazi actions of bringing Jewish people, first gypsies, and other parts, other sectors of the population who are against them, and killing them systematically. Now, this shows that although the 19th century is and 20th century were supposed to be expected to be better, more educated, with more welfare, etc., but because, he says, because political reason. Now he focuses on political reason. He has a book, Subject. In Subject and Power, he he focuses so much on political reason, political development, how during 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, there were more and more books on police organization, and parallel to medical organization, psychiatric organization, all these bureaucratic developments about which Weber also told, emergence of bureaucracy from patrimonial type of bureaucracy, which is dependent on the king, and the modern rational legal bureaucracy, and interruptions of other, actually Weber talks about that. Charismatic movements are there are interruptions with charismatic movements in his depiction. Okay, now I have told too much. Now I will pause a minute and try to show you a picture, a painting actually, by Velasquez, which now let me show here in the Turkish translation. This is the picture. This is now the order of things is translated into Turkish as kelimeler ve şeyler. İnsan bilimlerinin bir arkeolojisi. Now, this book, this Order of Things, where Foucault focuses on three human sciences, emergence of human sciences, and where human subject, as speaking subject, living subject, producing subject emerges, okay? But he starts the book with description of this painting, which is in 1656. So it is just classical age, what he calls classical age, and how classical age focused on representation. And this picture is the best example of that new type of conceptualization, new type of culture. Now, I will try to show you this picture if I can, and it will be better if when I talk about it from that point of view, by showing it to you. Okay, this one. So here comes Las Meninas. I hope you see this. Okay, now Las Meninas is an interesting painting because the painter himself is here. This man just on the back of canvas here, and he has his brush. He's painting, actually. He's painting. Now, what is he painting? That is one of the puzzles. What is he painting? Now, this picture where he is painting, whatever he's painting, but actually the center of this painting is princess. This princess, she is at that time 6-year-old or 7 years old, and the two are attendants. The two women in between the two, and one is actually giving something in a red cup so that she will drink it. So these are meninas. Meninas, nedimeler. So if you look for this picture in Turkish, nedimeler in Turkish it's called in Spanish las meninas, las meninas. Okay, there are here two dwarfs, and in the back there is a chaperone. In the all the way back there is the queen's helper man Okay, they are all here, but says Foucault, there are also someone in the position of the viewer, in the position of viewer. We are when we are watching this picture, we are in a privileged position as a viewer. Of course, the painter is privileged, or the princess is privileged, but we are more privileged as a viewer of this picture. And Foucault says, actually, in the space where the viewer, us, occupy, are the queen and the king. Queen and king are actually standing here outside of, or on the other part of this room, and this should be a large room, obviously. And it seems that princess and her attenders, helpers, all that entourage, all that group, dwarves, came there to entertain queen and king, who are most likely are painted. Velasquez, the painter, is painting king and the queen. How do we know that? We know that because here at the back there's a mirror. In the mirror, now that mirror, okay, there are two theories here, is reflecting king and queen, where they are in the space of the model for the painter. And they are the models for painting. And they are reflected in the mirror in the back of the room. We see that here. But the second theory, actually, the mirror shows what Velasquez is painting. That is, he is painting king and the queen. Anyway, Foucault starts with this because it is a good example of the beginning of a new age in European cultural history, European political history, European scientific history, the emergence of human sciences, other sciences, new art forms, etc. With Renaissance, painting, three-dimensional perspective painting started, but here it reached the zenith, the apex. And this picture is depicted as the classical example of Western three-dimensional colored painting representing human beings, representation, the painting representing what the painter sees, the exact same, exactly similar. The more similar it is, the better it is. Representation in the classical age was that way. And actually, from here, Foucault goes to the point that actually, at that time, thinking was, the new way of human sciences, thinking human sciences, or thinking in biology, was this kind of exact representation of human body, exact representation of the language, representing exactly the words, representing the things that they name, the exact correspondence between the things and the words. Whereas in the next era, in the modern age, the words are paradigmatically and syntagmatically related among each other. Anyway, I think I can now. If you go in, this is from Wikipedia. If you go, this is 10 years later. Margaret Teresa, Infanta Margaret Teresa, who is the one in the center, mourning her father's death, and this is her, you know, in the painting, apart from the painting. And here, as you can see, all the people present in the painting is being shown. So you can go and take a look at it. Now let me see whether I was able to remove it. Let me remove it and see you here. You are now in front of me. Okay. Okay, now let me continue. This is, as I said, the order of things and the emergence of human sciences. Actually, towards the end of this book, Foucault talks about a triangle. Now, on the one hand, there are natural sciences and mathematics. Okay. On the other part, you know, he's creating a space, and let's say a four-dimensional, okay, not only three, four actually, space, natural sciences, human sciences, these three, economics, linguistics, and biology, where human subject emerges. And thirdly, philosophy. From ancient times, philosophy existed there actually. Natural sciences, human sciences emerged from philosophy, but philosophy is there. So there are formal sciences, mathematics formal, and then there are these human sciences closer, formally conceptualized. Philosophy, three dimensions. And then now in this three-dimensional space, there's psychology, about which he already spoke, as a psychiatry, as a complement to medicine, as a differentiated subfield of medicine, and psychology, psych-pided. And then there emerges sociology and society of the producers, how they are not anymore in the villages, peasant producers. Now they are in the cities. Emergence of the cities, the problems, and sociology emerging to deal with all these problems, along with other sciences, and in the service or together with the political reason state, using all these information in the disciplining, controlling of the population, of the new population. Okay, now this population and the modes of controlling this population is being elaborated, conceptualized in his next book. Next book is titled as, in English, it is Discipline and Punish. Discipline and Punish. So in French, I think it is surveillance is also including. So here, criminality, and in relation to guilty people, how guilty people is punished, how punished. Now, he says that there are three types of power. Okay, now he enters into a typology of power, and he elaborates a conceptualization of power that is different from already existing in political science, in sociology, in other fields. There is a conceptualization of power as state power. For example, Weber's definition is monopoly of means of violence, an organization which has monopoly of means of violation. Foucault says that is only one form of power. That's only one form of power, and he calls that absolute power. The first type of power, absolute power, that emerged in Europe, in France, during classical age. During classical age, a new type of political reasoning and a bureaucratic organization gradually, and the king at the top of it, and a criminal is punished in the name of the king by the representatives of the king in large openings of the cities, where people, plazas, in the plazas, where people can come and watch the guilty person, the criminal, being punished. Actually, like Order of Things opens with this Las Meninas, that book opens with a detailed description of, in France, of implementation of a guilty person who defamated the king is being punished by in the center of the city, in the plaza of the city, all people gathered. One horse is tied to the one hand, the other horse to the other hand, the other third one to one feet, and the other one foot, the other one to another foot, and the fifth one to the head. And then all 5 horses are being beaten. So you can imagine how the members of the guilty person is being taken apart. Or it could have been a hanging or a guillotine, as it was during the French Revolution. Okay, but he says that type of punishment ended. It existed still during French Revolution, which is 18th century, 1789. But as we enter into 19th century, gradually that is being replaced. That type of punishment is replaced by prisons, punishing the guilty people, gathering them into the prison building. And he used the design of the prison building by an English, British Bentham. He's a utilitarian economist at the same time, but as you know, the 18th century thinkers are, he's also architect, and he drew a design of a prison, at the middle of which there's a tower. There is a tower where there are the guardians, the people of the prison who are responsible for controlling, for watching the prisoners. Now, around the tower, there are cells, rooms. There are rooms, so many rooms. Okay, there are so many rooms, and from the tower, it is 360 degree. All those 360 degree cells, prison cells or prison rooms, and the prisoners in them are being watched, are being gazed, observed. The gaze, the medical gaze here, the gaze of the guardian. Now, this is the punishment instead of physical punishment. Now, replaced by constant observation, surveillance. This is the French word entered into English, surveillance. Into Turkish, it is translated as gözetim, gözetim. A continuous gözetim, surveillance, watching, gaze, which is supposed to reform the prisoners. Now, the prisoners, as they are being watched by the guardians, by the officers of the prison, their activities are under surveillance, under observation. So they internalize, Foucault says, they internalize this gaze, this watching, this surveillance. So human selves become surveillance, observing themselves, controlling themselves, so that they will not commit crimes because they gained control of their emotions, their reason, their self. So this is, he says, is a disciplining, is disciplinary power. This type of power is disciplinary power. So there's a transition from absolute power to disciplinary power. And it emerges first in prisons, disciplinary power. Okay. But from there, actually, maybe it also exists in hospitals, which we already discussed. Now, hospitals are also panopticon, disciplinary. And these are panopticon institutions. Panopticon, pan, all, panopticon, optics, where we buy our eyeglasses, optic, seeing, to see, all seeing, seeing everything, panopticon institutions. What are these panopticon institutions or disciplinary power? Prisons, hospitals, army camps, and then eventually that becomes a part of modern society, of not only disciplining now, but also education, giving knowledge, giving skills, so that the producer's subject, the producer as a subject, will be more skillful, more knowledgeable. So schools, from elementary school to middle school to etc. Actually, universities existed already from 11th century, but the schools that gathered children together into a closed space did not exist before. It existed with this new type of conceptualization of power, disciplinary power, panopticon type of power, and actually this here, there's a transition to his third of power, which is biopower. Now, biopower, now state is not that absolute power punishing people. No, state is being transformed into institutions. Minister of Health emerged, for example, or population bureaus emerged. And they started registering, registering births, registering deaths, carrying out censuses, counting people. Huh? Now, this is a new phenomenon, a new function of the state, going into the dwelling places of people and registering them, counting the age, the sex, and the knowledge level, etc., etc. Census. So the biopower, Foucault says, or state using biopower is enhancing health level, welfare of the population, so that they will be more productive, so that state will gather more revenue, more taxes, etc. This is the emergence of modern nation state, and its population transforming into society. Now, instead of communities of villages, etc., etc., etc., now there is a society of citizens. He's focusing on this transformation. Now, as you can see, instead of conceptualizing power from top down, which is true for absolute power, how it is being transformed into bureaucratic institutions, prisons, army camps, hospitals, schools of all types, occupational schools, general lycées, etc. All those schools. So children from the age of 6 or even earlier kindergartens, modern society is a society where all children go through at least first 4 years or first 8 years, or societies are boasting how many years of schooling the population go through. This is biopower, a new type of conceptualization of power. Now, but here, Foucault does not stop here. He further decentralizes as he removes the subject from the center of the arena to the periphery. He also removes the concept of centralized hierarchical power to networks of power, networks of power, where now in these networks of power, now people have various strategies and tactics and struggling with each other, and so power is everywhere. It is in between two friends, in between a group, or in between. There is this power of doctor and patient. Now, doctor having power over the patient, or engineer having power over the workers. Why do they have that power? Because they have a discursive knowledge of a field. They have knowledge of the science of medicine, or art of medicine, or science of engineering. So he conceptualizes then power in a more decentralized way, but in terms of also discourses. Now, Foucault made another innovation. now before Foucault, Althusser, for example, remember Althusser from your second year. Althusser conceptualized state in two ways: ideological state apparatuses and repressive state apparatuses. Now, it was his conceptualization was hierarchical and from top to bottom. Now, Foucault, in opposition, okay, he actually maybe ideological state apparatuses and panopticon institutions, disciplinary institutions of Foucault are similar. Okay, that is still, there's a hierarchy there. But in Foucault, in Althusser's case, ideology, a single ideology, dominant in the society, which is the ideology of the ruling power. Now, in Foucault replaced ideology, the concept of ideology, with the concept of discourse. Discourses are, it can be one paragraph describing, okay, this is, now let me drink tea. This is a cup for drinking tea. Now, I can talk about this cup and the tea. I can build paragraphs of sentences, and that's a discourse about drinking tea from a cup. But there's also a discourse of medicine, discourse of medicine dealing with blood circulation, discourse of medicine dealing with nervous system, etc., etc., or clinical psychological discourse. Clinical psychological discourse, which is discourse is based on, some of the discourses are based on knowledge that precedes it. So, or actually knowledge and discourse. Now, somehow, discourse is more everyday, common sense discourses. You can have common sense discourses, scientific discourses, social scientific discourses, artistic discourse, discourse. But the thing is this: ideology is a single global ideology comprising the whole society, versus all these fragmented fields, areas, about which there are these discourses, and together with these discourses, there is power. So there are power and discourses. Because of that knowledge, there is power, or because there is power, there is this knowledge. Okay, but Foucault says you cannot reduce power to knowledge or knowledge to power. They are his archaeological research has shown him that they are distinct. They cannot be reduced to each other. Okay, so power, knowledge, discourse, and practice, action of human beings. We are trying to understand social action, how human beings act in their life, in social life. As sociologists, that's what we are interested in, how human beings act in social life, how they interact, how they implement their occupations. These are, that's what we are trying to understand. And Foucault supplies us with these concepts of power, various models of power, how subjects are being constructed, and how those subjects, using discourses, using knowledge of a science, a field, and and then act. When they act, they are using power. The action is a power relationship. Now, a power relationship is one person controlling the action of the other person. That's a power relationship. If one person is controlling the action of the other person. Now, in relationship to this power, Foucault conceptualizes the subject. Now, in English and in French, subject means also being subjected to a power. Now, he says human beings become subjects, özne, in Turkish, becomes subject, özne, when they are subjected to a power, a dominating power, controlling his, her action, that person is transformed, is constructed into a subject in relationship to that power. Now, that is one way of, and most of the people become subjects in this relationship, but also people become subjects in relationship to their own conscience, heart, mind, conscience, in relationship to ethical, moral, ethics, ahlak, vicdan, by being subordinated to one's own knowledge about herself, about himself, ethical knowledge, moral knowledge, and controlling his, her actions. Now, in that relationship also, human beings become subjects, özne, they become özne, subject. Okay, now this last part, okay, let me finish with this one. Foucault's last book is second and third volumes of his book, History of Sexuality. Now, in the first volume of History of Sexuality, he goes back to his, similar to his first book, but in his first book and second, third books, it was using archaeological methods. But now, in this one, and especially in the second and third volumes, he is using genealogical method. And first, in the first volume, he shows how a science of sex, a science of gender, a science of being man and woman, or sexuality emerged, a science. Whereas before that, or in the East, it was art of sexuality became science of sexuality. Now, a transformation similar to emergence of human sciences, biology, economics, linguistics, or other natural sciences, or psychiatry, medicine becoming more and more physiological, anatomical, scientific. Also, as a part of medicine, and this is a medical, actually, it is a control or shaping or subjectivizing sexuality through medical scientific practice. And then in the second and third volumes, he goes back to ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, literature, and he deals with how there is also a relationship to the subject, self. Actually, the third volume is titled as Care of the Self. Care of the Self. How, as I described, being subject, either by being subordinating to an external power, or by subordinating yourself to your ethical knowledge, morality, or self-knowledge. Self-knowledge. Socrates says, know thyself, know yourself. By knowing yourself, and how with this knowledge, a new type of subject, a subject that is subordinated to self-knowledge, to ethics, to ethical knowledge, to moral knowledge. So now, instead of archaeology, he uses here genealogy, genealogical. He goes back. Now, in archaeology, he was describing an era, how, for example, in Order of Things, the archaeology of human sciences, he's talking about 17th century or 18th century. How is in 18th century thinking about economic matters, thinking about words, language, and thinking about human bodies, human organisms, how they are very much similar to each other. As if archaeologically, he's in a strata. Actually, he's using archaeology in a figurative way. As you know, archaeology is a science of ancient history, where you gain knowledge of ancient societies by excavating, physical excavation. You dig an öğren yeri in Turkish, a historical site, and then first you have maybe Ottoman, if you know it is being not being lived anymore there, and some Ottoman relics, and then some Selçuk, then Roman, then you go back the Sumerians, Hittite, or you can then in Istanbul this metro was being constructed, going down under the Bosphorus. There they founded 8,000 from 8,000 some tribes, bands using stone tools, not before Iron Age. So this is archaeological, the science of archaeological excavation. Now, Foucault is using archaeology, but this is cultural archaeology, or knowledge archaeology, or thought archaeology of thoughts, systems of thought. How systems of thought are formed, how similar they are to each other. When you dig archives, but in genealogy, you go back and you find out what kind of transformations a present concept, a present behavior, attitude, discourse went through, how they are being transformed. How, for example, during 19th century, there was a deterministic thinking, how causally things are related to each other, and how with Foucault, actually, history became more contingent. belirlenmiş, deterministic and kurumsal, contingent. Yani how determinism gave way to contingent relationships, contingent structures, not 100% determined, known a relationship, but a relationship strategically by using various discourses and powers being formed. For some time it continues, and then it dissolves, and it gives way to emergence of something else. This type of conceptualization, this conceptualization of contingency, which is for social sciences, determination and voluntarism are two ends. Is social life voluntaristically with people's individual wills being formed, or it is determined by macro structures, by state, by being determined versus being individual. Now, Foucault says this totalization, integration, and individualization, these are historical. Individualization is also historically emerged, and it became, totalization and individualization became more and more contingent. But it doesn't mean that it does not become totalities like in the Second World War. He warns that there is that possibility in the world we are living, and he's thinking that this modern world was an era, and it is going to give way to some other era, other cultural structures, more contingent, more determined. We don't know, he says. And here, there's, I think, a similarity between Wallerstein's transition and bifurcation, into different paths, and Foucault's how the modern era is ending and what kind of era we are emerging. People mostly named this new era as postmodernism, but he doesn't accept that. He doesn't accept this both post-structuralist and postmodernist as well. He doesn't accept also being called structuralist. Okay, he developed a Foucauldian approach in social sciences, in sociology. With this, let me end this